ARGYLLE finally released here in the UK. I think we get it maybe a day before the USA, so, that's always nice for us. But yeah, it feels like the trailers for this have been in the cinema for a long time, like a year or maybe longer. Finally got to see it today. Let's get into it.
Oh my God.
Oh my God.
Oh my God.
Matthew Vaughn's latest is kinda familiar territory for him, a action, spy, comedy, thriller, with a pop star cameo thrown in for good measure. ARGYLLE tells the story of Elly Conway, played by Bryce Dallas Howard. She is a successful writer of spy thriller novels. She's on her 5th book, or 6th book, I think. The lead character in these books is called ARGYLLE. He is played by, at least in Ellie's mind, the character is played by Henry Cavill with an interesting haircut, kind of like an Ivan Drago haircut, but, not blonde, black, and not Dolph Lundgren, but Henry Cavill. Not sure what they were going for there, but, that's pretty much what it looks like. Ellie is plunged into the real world of international espionage when she runs into Sam Rockwell's character. I think his name was Aiden. He plays a real-life spy who informs her that what she's been writing in her books is actually paralleling / predicting what's happening in the real world when it comes to, spycraft and espionage and, all that kind of jazz.
What you wrote in your new book actually happened, and you kicked a hornet's nest you didn't even know existed.
He catches up with her on a train, saves her from some bad guy goons who are trying to kill her, explains all this to her, and this kicks off the plot. All of that is pretty much covered in the trailer, or trailers, so there's not really any spoilers there. There is more to the story. There is quite a few plot twists and turns that happen in the second and third act of the movie that I genuinely didn't see coming, so that's always nice. They definitely didn't give away everything in the trailer, which a lot of movies in the past decade or so are very guilty of. All of the cast here are great. Bryce Dallas Howard is good. Sam Rockwell is good. When is Sam Rockwell not good? Henry Cavill is great. John Cena and his cameo is great. Even Dua Lipa, who I'm not sure if she's ever acted in anything before, but she is good in her little role as well. Quick side note on that. If you were to believe the marketing for this movie, especially a lot of the posters, you would think that Henry Cavill and Dua Lipa are the main characters in this movie. They're not. They are extended cameos. That's it. So, don't go into this thinking that it's a Henry Cavill movie or a Dua Lipa movie, because it's not. It's a Bryce Dallas Howard and a Sam Rockwell movie. And that's a good thing. Like I said, they are both really good in this movie. Like most Matthew Vaughn movies, the action is present and correct, and for the most part is quite good. There's a really good set piece towards the end of the movie involving a slick oil floor. It's a bit of a rip-off of the first Transporter movie with Jason Statham, but, we'll let it go because it is quite a good action sequence. The general story is also quite good. It's not breaking any new ground here, but it tells a familiar story, but in quite a unique way. There's quite a fresh take on how they tell the story. The visual style of this movie, the visual language is quite good, so they definitely get points for that. But I'm not really that excited for this movie, to talk about this movie, as you might be able to tell, and that's because the pace of this movie takes a nosedive after the first act. Like I said, the first act is pretty much, told in the trailer. That kind of zips along at a good pace and really sets up the story. But after the first act, it just takes a bit of a nosedive and it never really recovers from it. The length of the movie is a bit bloated as well. It's easily 20 to 30 minutes too long. The person who was sitting to my left in the cinema actually fell asleep for maybe 5 or 10 minutes, and this was like a 5:20 p.m. showing, so this was a early evening showing. It's not like it was like a midnight screening. That person fell asleep. That person knows who they are. And if you've managed to not fall asleep during this video, a wee sub to the channel would be fantastic. Thank you very much. Speaking of the action in this movie, it's a 12A, so there's not a lot of blood. In fact, there's very little blood. But there is a lot of killing that goes on. There's a lot of bad guys getting shot and stabbed and killed and blown up. But some of the impact of that is lost because it's kind of been neutered down and diluted down to reach a 12A or a PG-13 in America audience. And I think that's to the movie's detriment. Previous Matthew Vaughn movies like Kingsman and Kick-Ass, they had the violence in them, but the violence wasn't neutered down. The violence was, I don't want to say it was celebrated, but there was more to the violence. It didn't feel as, like I said, it didn't feel as diluted in those movies. It definitely feels like it's kind of like, stripped back in this movie for no other reason than to, satisfy the ratings board so that it can be classed as a 12A/PG-13 so that it can, in theory, reach a wider audience. I think that's a mistake. I think there's definitely a market for, R-rated/15 in the UK rated action movies that don't shy away from the violence. When people get shot, they die. And it's, in a movie like this, it's okay to show that. It's worth talking about the fact that this is an Apple TV original movie as well. And that means two things. One, there's plenty of Apple products on show here. A lot of product placement. Everyone uses an iPhone. Elly uses a funky new iMac to write her novels on, and that's in the shot quite a lot, prominently with the big white Apple logo there on her Apple keyboard and her Apple mouse while using her Apple iPhone. Yeah, there's a lot of Apple product placement in this. It's not like it's majorly distracting, but it is there, and it is very obvious. But, they put up at least some of the money for this movie, so fair play to them getting their products in there. Like I said, it's not overly distracting, but it is there. And two, it means that this movie will be on Apple TV Plus at some point in the near future. Does that mean less people are going to go and see this in the cinema? Does it mean it's going to make less money because of that? I don't actually know. I think maybe yes. So I went to see it on opening day here in the UK, Thursday. It was a 5:20pm showing, fairly big screen at my local Cineworld, and I think there was only maybe 10 people in the cinema. 10 years ago, a movie like this, that cinema on a 5:20pm showing would be nearly sold out. Yeah, so I don't know what this means for the future of movies. I don't know what it means for the future of cinema. A kind of similar thing happened with Killers of the Flower Moon, which was another Apple TV original movie. I still haven't actually seen that movie yet. I didn't get around to seeing it in the cinema. I know it's on Apple TV Plus now. Again, I haven't managed to carve out, 14 hours to sit and watch it yet, but I will. But I'm guilty of being one of those people who, even though I love the cinema, I never got a chance to see this in the cinema, and whenever I was trying to make time to see it in the cinema, we're talking about, Killers of the Flower Moon here, whenever I tried to make time to see it in the cinema, I did think to myself, well, it'll be on Apple TV soon enough, so I'll catch it then. Did that play into the fact that I didn't go and see it in the cinema? Probably a little bit, yeah. So I'm not sure. Yeah, not sure what that means for the future of cinema. It's an interesting one. This movie probably might not have gotten made, at least not at the budget that it got made, without the help of Apple TV. But because it's Apple TV, people might choose to not see it in the cinema. So it's a bit of a, double-edged sword, catch-22, whatever, metaphor you want to use. It's an interesting one. So I'm going to go with 5 out of 10 for this movie. I toyed with 6 because I really did enjoy the first act, but we're going to settle on 5, which might be a bit harsh for some people. Let me know what you think in the comments. Have you seen Argyle? What score would you give it? I really like the director. I like Matthew Vaughn movies. I really like the cast. The cast are really good in it. But yeah, it's just the pace of this movie. It just takes a nosedive after the first act, and it never recovers. It's probably my least favourite Matthew Vaughn movie of all the movies he's done. Yeah, so that's a shame. But, like I said, I am a fan of Matthew Vaughn. I think Kingsman is really good. The second Kingsman is really good as well. X-Men First Class is really good. Kick-Ass is brilliant. The Kingsman, wasn't a huge fan of that one, and I'm definitely not a fan of this. Not a fan of Argyle. I'm a fan of the director, I'm a fan of the cast, but not a fan of the movie. That's us, folks. Thanks very much for watching. If you like this, hit that like button, and I will catch you in the next video.